No matter how many times we dive into the wizarding world, it never gets old. Today, we're cracking open the secrets behind the Harry Potter films.
You're a wizard, Harry.
And revealing just how far they strayed from the original books. From twisted storylines to completely missing characters, some of these changes might just leave you spellbound or furious. This is where the magic meets the truth. You're watching Movie Fanatic, and we're just getting started. House points play a vital role in the books, fueling friendly and sometimes not so friendly competition between students. But in the Harry Potter films, that whole system basically vanishes after the first movie. The Sorcerer's Stone gives the House Cup a dramatic finale, but from then on, the point system barely gets a mention. Sure, we get a blink and you miss it moment in the Chamber of Secrets when Professor Sprout awards 10 points to Gryffindor, and another in The Prisoner of Azkaban when Snape deducts 5. That's about it.
Gryffindors, note that 5 points will be taken from your house.
Even The Goblet of Fire once included a scene where Snape took 10 points each from Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, but that was cut from the final version. The movies also completely skipped the running point totals shown on the hourglasses in the Great Hall, a memorable visual element from the books. Instead of focusing on house rivalries and student motivation, the film shifted attention to visual storytelling. From designer robes to polished hairstyles, the filmmakers emphasized appearances more than Rowling ever did. In the books, students wore plain black robes and didn't fuss over style. In the movies, their looks evolved with each film, especially for the lead trio. In the books, Hogwarts students all wear the same standard black robes. There's no mention of house-specific colors or crests on their uniforms. But in the films, each house is visually distinct. Gryffindors wear red and gold accents, Slytherins are decked out in green and silver, and even the house crests are proudly displayed. The costumes go further too. Boys wear sweaters and slacks, while girls are usually seen in skirts or cardigans, giving the students a more polished modern school look. Then there's the issue of physical appearances. Take Harry for example. Rowling described him as having bright green eyes, but Daniel Radcliffe, who plays Harry, has blue eyes and couldn't wear colored contacts due to an allergic reaction during filming, so the filmmakers let that detail slide. Hermione also changed significantly. In the books, she's introduced as having bushy hair and large front teeth, both traits that were toned down for Emma Watson's on-screen portrayal. And Ron? Rowling wrote him as tall and lanky, with a long nose and blue eyes. But Rupert Grint is stockier and has green eyes, making him look quite different from the character readers imagined. And it's not just the Golden Trio whose looks shifted from page to screen. Take Draco Malfoy, described in the books as pale, sharp-faced, and white blonde. Actor Tom Felton had to bleach his naturally brown hair for the role, but the films gave Draco a cooler, more restrained presence. In the books, he uses slurs like mudblood frequently. In the films, it's said only once.
You filthy little mudblood.
Neville Longbottom went through the biggest transformation of all. Described as round-faced and forgetful, Neville was played by Matthew Lewis, who by the final films looked more like a heartthrob than an awkward misfit.
Mr. Longbottom!
Fun fact, in the early movies, he wore fake teeth and prosthetic ears to match the character's original look. Even Fred and George Weasley didn't escape the makeover treatment. The twins were cast perfectly in terms of energy, but James and Oliver Phelps aren't natural redheads. They had to dye their hair for years. Also, the full extent of their chaotic genius, especially their magical inventions, didn't always make it to the big screen.
Into the cauldron, handsome!
Much of Harry's miserable summer with the Dursleys on Privet Drive barely makes it into the movies. In The Philosopher's Stone, Hagrid shows up on Harry's birthday, July 31st, to deliver the news.
You're a wizard, Harry.
But the film rushes him off to Diagon Alley the very next day, and before long, he's boarding the Hogwarts Express. In the book, however, Harry actually returns to the Dursleys and spends the rest of August with them, only leaving on September 1st. The films gloss over this timeline, making it seem like Harry starts his school year a whole month early. In fact, many of the opening chapters in the later books were also trimmed or cut entirely to speed up his journey back to Hogwarts. As a result, we lose much of the sense of isolation and emotional abuse Harry faced during his childhood summers. Directors of the franchise never seemed particularly fond of the Dursleys. Several of their scenes were cut completely. By the way, we have a video with cut scenes on our channel. Subscribe so you don't miss out. While the film still made it clear that the Dursleys were awful, dressing Harry in Dudley's old rags and forcing him to sleep in a cupboard, the true extent of their cruelty is far more detailed in the books. Then again, maybe that's a blessing. Some scenes were better left unfilmed, as Uncle Vernon famously yells, "What the devil are you doing, boy?"
The devil are you doing up here?
One of the biggest disappointments for book fans was the complete removal of Peeves the Poltergeist from the Philosopher's Stone. Only those who read the books know just how important and chaotic Peeves really is. Originally, Peeves was supposed to appear in the first film, portrayed by iconic British comedian Rick Mayall. In fact, some scenes were even shot with him, but Peeves was cut during post-production due to time constraints and the belief that he wasn't essential to the plot. Needless to say, die-hard fans were not amused. In the books, Peeves is a mischievous, solid, not ghostly spirit, with a wicked grin, small black eyes, and a jester's outfit, complete with a bow tie and a hat full of jingling bells. Unlike the friendly house ghosts, Peeves can interact with the physical world, fly, and even be affected by magic. He's loud, obnoxious, and absolutely unforgettable. His antics could have added an extra layer of fun to the films, but he never made it, not even in the sequel. Another fascinating omission comes from Harry's very first night at Hogwarts. In the book, he has a dream, or rather a vision, that turns out to be prophetic. He's wearing Professor Quirrell's turban, which starts whispering at him to join Slytherin. Then Draco Malfoy morphs into Professor Snape. This strange but powerful dream foreshadows the dark connections between key characters and helps explain why Harry immediately distrusts both Quirrell and Snape. The film skips it entirely, and without it, Harry's suspicions seem a bit random. In The Chamber of Secrets, the books reveal something new about August Filch, Hogwarts' grumpy caretaker, that actually makes him a more sympathetic character.
Well, take a good look, lads. This night might well be the last you spend in this castle.
In one scene, Harry stumbles upon a letter on Filch's desk, a correspondence from Quickspell, a beginner's magic course for adults. Why? Because Filch is a squib, someone born into a magical family but with no magical powers of their own. It's a heartbreaking revelation that adds depth to a character often seen as just bitter and cruel. But this crucial moment is completely omitted from the films. The concept of squibs isn't explained at all, leaving movie-only viewers to guess why Filch acts the way he does, or why he seems so resentful toward the students he can't magically control. And it's not just Filch. In the Order of the Phoenix, Arabella Figg, Harry's eccentric cat-loving neighbor, finally reveals she's been watching over him on Dumbledore's orders. But how? She's not a witch. Well, in the books she's a squib too. Without that context, her sudden knowledge of Dementors and the magical world seems bizarre and confusing. I solemnly swear I am up to...
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
Understanding none of this would be a fair response from anyone who only watched the films. The Prisoner of Azkaban should have been the Marauder's moment to shine, but in the film they're barely even mentioned. In the books, we learn that Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs are none other than Remus Lupin, Peter Pettigrew, Sirius Black, and James Potter. These four created the Marauder's Map, the magical blueprint of Hogwarts that Fred and George Weasley give to Harry. But in the movie, Harry never learns that his own father helped make it. What's more, 3 of the Marauders, except for Lupin, who's a werewolf, are unregistered animagi. That means they can transform into animals at will, illegally. This detail is huge in the books. It explains how Sirius escaped Azkaban as a dog and how Peter Pettigrew lived for years disguised as Ron's pet rat. But if you only watch the movies, none of that makes much sense. By skipping the Marauder's backstory, the films missed a major emotional beat, one that connects Harry to his father, explains key plot twists, and reveals just how far his dad and his friends went to protect one another. Rita Skeeter, the gossip-hungry journalist from the Daily Prophet, plays a pretty big role in both the Goblet of Fire book and movie, but the final twist in her storyline completely left out of the films. At the end of the 4th book, Hermione discovers that Rita is an unregistered animagus who can turn into a beetle, which is exactly how she eavesdropped on private conversations to write her over-the-top, often false stories. Hermione uses this information to blackmail Rita into silence for an entire year. No more lies about Harry. In the 5th book, she even forces Rita to give Harry a real interview for The Quibbler, a fringe newspaper run by Luna Lovegood's dad. It's the only way they can spread the truth about Voldemort's return. But in the films, none of this is explained. Viewers never find out that Rita is an animagus, or how Hermione managed to shut her down so effectively. Which unshown animagus storyline do you wish the films had kept? Rita Skeeter's or the Marauders? And why? Let us know in the comments. Hermione Granger in the films is portrayed as warm-hearted and kind, a version most fans have grown to love. But in the books, she's often more complex and a little ruthless. While movie Hermione, played by Emma Watson, is softer, book Hermione can be intense, even harsh. She traps Rita Skeeter, in her beetle animagus form, inside a jar for months and later blackmails her. None of this made it to the films, largely because Rita was never even revealed to be an animagus. And remember that scene in Order of the Phoenix where Hermione leads Umbridge into the Forbidden Forest? In the book, it's a calculated move to let the centaurs deal with her. Hermione is also pretty judgmental toward other girls like Lavender Brown and often clashes with Ron and Harry. The films cut out a lot of these arguments, making their friendship seem smoother and more supportive than it actually is in the books. In Prisoner of Azkaban, for instance, Ron and Harry don't speak to Hermione for nearly the whole school year.
She's a nightmare, honestly. No wonder she hasn't got any friends.
All because she tells a professor about Harry's mysterious new broomstick. They also regularly dismiss her concerns, like her passionate campaign for house elf rights, and they even pressure her to do their homework. Still, the films chose to highlight the positive, with warm hugs, team spirit, and emotional support, and maybe that's not such a bad thing. If film-only viewers knew more about the Marauders, they might not like them as much. In Order of the Phoenix, we get just a glimpse of Snape's school memories, a brief, almost dismissive flashback. While it shows James and Sirius bullying Snape, the scene is so short that many viewers could believe Snape somehow deserved it. But in the books, the truth is more disturbing. That memory? It's not revenge or a prank gone wrong. It's just pure boredom. Sirius even tells James he's bored, and when Snape walks by, they decide to torment him just for fun. James joins in enthusiastically, publicly humiliating Snape in front of the whole school. Lily Evans tries to defend him, but James mocks her and starts flirting instead. It's uncomfortable to read, and would be even more uncomfortable to watch. No wonder fans of the books view the Marauders with more nuance. And speaking of missing context, remember when Harry needs permission to visit Hogsmeade in Prisoner of Azkaban? In the film, it's left unresolved, but in the book, he eventually gets that permission slip from Sirius, who had just been revealed as his godfather and legal guardian. Without that scene, Harry's sudden freedom to visit Hogsmeade in the next films makes little sense. House elves play a surprisingly large role in the Goblet of Fire book, far more than the films let on. While most moviegoers are familiar only with Dobby and Creature, the books reveal a much broader world of house elf society. In fact, there are over 100 house elves working at Hogwarts alone, cooking meals, cleaning dormitories, and maintaining the castle in secret. They're rarely seen, but they're always there. One of the key subplots missing from the film involves Hermione founding SPEW, the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare. After learning about the elves laboring in Hogwarts kitchens, she becomes determined to fight for their rights.
Dobby is free.
But unlike Dobby, who longs for freedom, most house elves are deeply loyal to their masters and take pride in their work, and many are even offended by Hermione's efforts. Another major omission is the character of Winky, a house elf whose story is closely tied to the events of the Quidditch World Cup and Barty Crouch Jr.'s escape. Winky's downfall, fueled by misplaced loyalty and shame, adds real emotional depth and highlights the systemic mistreatment of magical creatures, something the films never really touch on. By leaving out these elements, the movies lose a layer of political and moral complexity. The world of Harry Potter is not just about good versus evil, it's also about how power works, who gets ignored, and who chooses to speak up. Here's a fun detail that never made it into the movies. After Ron's pet rat Scabbers is revealed to be none other than Peter Pettigrew in disguise, Sirius Black sends Ron a new pet as a kind of replacement, a tiny hyperactive owl named Pigwidgeon, or just Pig as Ron calls him with mild irritation. In the Goblet of Fire book, Pigwidgeon becomes Ron's official owl, and Harry frequently uses him to send letters to Sirius, who is in hiding following his escape from Azkaban.
And make sure you're alone. Serious. P.S. The bird bites.
The owl is excitable, clumsy, and has a habit of nipping at people, much to Ron's annoyance and everyone else's amusement. Strangely, this character was entirely omitted from the films. Pigwidgeon doesn't appear in Goblet of Fire, nor is he referenced later on, yet he was part of the original concept. Promotional images from the fourth film feature Rupert Grint as Ron posing with a small African white-faced owl, the very species meant to portray Pig. Oddly enough, this same owl seems to make a silent cameo in Half-Blood Prince, sitting in the background during a scene in the burrow, but no mention is made of it. Leaving out Pigwidgeon removed a charming and slightly chaotic element from Ron's life, one that could have offered a touch of levity and warmth, especially during the darker chapters of the story. One of the biggest unanswered questions in the Harry Potter films is how Fred and George managed to fund their joke shop, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. The Weasley family is repeatedly portrayed as struggling financially. Hand-me-down robes, patched-up belongings, and second-hand books are all part of their everyday life. So when the twins suddenly leave school and launch a thriving business in Half-Blood Prince, it's a bit of a mystery to film-only audiences. What the movies never explain is that Fred and George received a generous financial gift from Harry himself. In the Goblet of Fire book, Harry is declared the winner of the Triwizard Tournament after Cedric Diggory's tragic death. Though they were meant to be co-champions, Cedric's passing means Harry receives the full prize, 1,000 galleons. Overwhelmed with guilt, Harry tries to give the money to Cedric's parents, but they kindly refuse. So instead, Harry gives the entire sum to Fred and George, asking them to use it to fund their dream of starting a joke shop. Something that had always seemed out of reach due to their family's limited means. The twins later honor Harry's generosity by saying their success wouldn't have been possible without him. It's a meaningful gesture that shows Harry's character and deep bond with the Weasleys, and one of the many emotional beats that never made it from page to screen. In Order of the Phoenix, the film paints a rather unfair picture of Cho Chang. After revealing the existence of Dumbledore's army to Dolores Umbridge, she's labeled a traitor by her classmates, and even Harry coldly turns away from her. It's a sharp break in their relationship, and the movie frames it as Cho's betrayal, albeit under the influence of Veritaserum, the truth serum. Still, it leaves viewers with the impression that she was at fault, and Harry's refusal to hear her side effectively ends their romance. But that's not how things went in the books. In the original story, Cho was never the one who exposed the secret student group. It was actually her friend, Marietta Edgecombe, a character who never even appears in the movies. Marietta was reluctant to join the DA in the first place, and when the pressure mounted, she turned them in to protect her mother, who worked for the Ministry of Magic. She feared the fallout would endanger her family. However, thanks to a clever enchantment placed by Hermione on the membership list, Marietta's betrayal didn't go unnoticed. Her face broke out in pustules, spelling the word sneak across her skin. Cho tried to defend her friend's actions, but that only angered Harry further. Already emotionally strained, he couldn't handle the situation maturely, and their relationship soon fizzled out. By pinning the betrayal solely on Cho, the film not only erases Marietta's role entirely, but also simplifies a complex emotional thread. It turns a nuanced subplot about trust, fear, and misunderstanding into a black and white moment of betrayal. And while streamlining the plot for screen may have been necessary, it came at the cost of character depth, especially for Cho, who deserved better. Neville Longbottom evolves into one of the most important characters across the Harry Potter series, but unless you've read the books, you'd never know the heartbreaking truth about his past. In the movies, we only briefly see a photograph of Neville's parents, Alice and Frank Longbottom, when Sirius shares it with Harry in Order of the Phoenix. But the real story is far more tragic. In the 5th book, Harry, Ron, and Hermione accidentally run into Neville and his grandmother during a visit to St. Mungo's Hospital. There, they meet Neville's parents, alive but permanently damaged, tortured into insanity by Death Eaters using the Cruciatus Curse during the First Wizarding War. Both Alice and Frank were left unable to recognize their own son. They couldn't return to normal life, let alone raise Neville. It's a powerful moment in the book, one that explains Neville's deep inner strength and quiet determination. It also makes his stand against Voldemort in the final battle even more meaningful. Sadly, none of this made it into the 5th film. Without that context, Neville's growth and bravery can feel sudden or unexplained on screen. And this is just one of many powerful details the movies left out. Want to know what else the films missed? Subscribe now so you don't miss part 2, coming next Saturday.